Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, and as everyone knows, not just your chancellor of cheerfulness, but your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, here with another episode of Robservations, the show about something. I'm, of course, Robcasting at you from the Robservatory. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community, and ladies and gentlemen, gentle beings, kind souls from across the 28 known galaxies, let me just say, I owe every one of you, the entire community, a hearty, a thank you, and I guess a congratulations to all of you. Today, Robservations and the Burnettwork passed 25,000 subscribers. And I want to thank you for that. Those were hard-fought, hard-won subscribers. Obviously, my show is a little different than other people's shows. I mean, it really is all about our community. I don't like the term clickbait because, after all, most of us YouTubers, especially in the genre pundit space, are here to be entertaining. And if we don't grab your eye, there's a lot of us, however we differentiate ourselves from one another, is okay. And, of course, the content, the proof is in the pudding. And I have obviously been overwhelmed by all of the support for this channel, by all of you. Especially, I have to thank everybody who tunes in and watches Whining About Movies. It was important. I dragged Elizabeth into doing that show when we sheltered at home. I didn't know if people would respond to it. She obviously had never been on YouTube before or speaking in front of large groups of people. She has, however, been a teacher in her past, so speaking in front of groups was not necessarily alien to her, but you guys have made her feel very welcome, and we have a great, tight-knit community on that show as well. Some of you are crossovers, so you all know who you are, but a profound thanks. I don't know what 25,000 subscribers means necessarily. I mean, there's more eyeballs on the channel, more people like the content, which is good. But what I think is great is the community that has built up around this channel that I hear from every single day. So thank you very much for that. And it's very much appreciated. So kudos to all of you. Now, many of you know that next week, I will once again be appearing at the Mainframe live and online Comic-Con. It was so successful, they decided to do a very quick 2.0, and I will be moderating some conversations with some people, actually. I mean, these guys are killing it, I gotta say. The first person that they told me that I was going to get to talk to is Denethor himself. That's right, John Noble. I will be moderating a conversation on Sunday with him. I think at 1, don't quote me on that, 1 in the afternoon. Obviously, he played Denethor on Lord of the Rings and Return of the King. He was also on Fringe, and of course, he's been on things like The Blacklist, but he's done voiceover work, he's done video game work, he's done a lot of work. Excuse me, and I'm very excited to speak with him. And also, I'm very excited to speak with Lisa Emery, who plays one of my favorite, I'm going to call her a femme fatale, one of my favorite villainesses. Oh, Mrs. Snell on Ozark. Wow, do I love her, and I can't wait to talk to her about her career, what it's like to be on Ozark, and what it's like to be one of the great female villains of all time on television. Dare I say, the great villains of all time. I love her, and I love her performance. And she took it to the next level in Season 3 of Ozark. So that, my friends, is going to be a heck of a lot of fun. So join us. It's free. You can just log on and watch. And I had a really good conversation last time. I mean, J.M. DeMatteis, one of my favorite comic book writers, one of my favorite writers, actually. And it was fun. I mean, I think they do a really good job. It's very well produced. And I'm very excited for that. So tune in next week. That'll be on both, obviously, Saturday and Sunday. And I will, of course, be pimping that out. I don't want to offend anyone. Should I not say pimping? I should say I will be promoting and hoping you get there. I'm not making any money from this. I'm just doing it for fun, and I'm glad that they asked me because I get to talk to cool people. So that's always a good thing. Now, in my quest for looking for interesting articles or interesting things to cover, I would have thought that during this time of, lockdown, the world is locked down, that the entertainment business would have less to talk about. I don't think that's necessarily been true. It's just what has been talked about is different. And thanks to my fellow agent Cody Banks, producer Carrie David, who I interviewed on the 400th episode of this show, who's got her movie Breaking Their Silence, Women on the Front Lines of the Poaching War, burning up the festival charts. She hooked me up. Well, it didn't hook me up. I don't know this person. I've never met them, but pointed me in the direction of their commentary. And I really think that this gentleman is on it. And I think that he's really got his finger on the pulse. I mean, they say he's a producer. I don't know much about him personally. I've just been reading his column, his Medium column in The Startup, and I found it. I shared one of his columns earlier this month, maybe late in April. But there's two that I want to talk about today. They're fairly long, but I thought they were worth reading. And his name is Richard Janes. And again, I don't know him. Although I will say I was surprised when I actually sent him a message, a direct message on Twitter asking if I could interview him for the show, that he already followed me on Twitter. So I thought that was fun. So thanks for that, Richard. But I don't know him, but his last two articles are crushing it. And if you work in the entertainment business or you are at all interested in the business of entertainment, I really do think his columns are essential reading. And again, they're on Medium because they're much deeper dives than you'd read on Deadline or on, say, Variety or The Hollywood Reporter. So I wanted to jump into this one, and boy, did I think this was topical, as you will soon see. This column he wrote, this was dated May 11th. I missed this one, and I went looking for his columns after I read his latest column, and I thought this was really amazing. It is titled Hollywood's Broken System and the Three Letters That Will Save It. And I think you'll all know where I'm getting at with this. Hollywood has been broken. Once again, this is Richard Janes, and this is from his columns on Medium, medium.com. Hollywood has been broken for years due to a lack of focus on three little letters that should be at the core of any modern business. But times are changing, and these three letters will be the key to future profitability of filmmaking at every budget, for every genre, for studios and indies alike. For years, what was at the core of the Hollywood economic model for both theatrical releases and home entertainment sales was a laughable marketing process. TV almost had it right, but even then they missed the mark. Wondering what those three letters are? LTV. LTV is an acronym for the lifetime value of a consumer, or in this case, the lifetime value of an audience member. This new way of thinking around the lifetime value of an audience member stands to be the revolutionary twist we've been longing for at every level. Studios and streamers. Think about it for a moment. Let's take the longest-running franchise in history, James Bond. Each time a new movie comes out, the distributor has to spend millions of dollars on billboard advertisements, TV and radio spots, you name it. The MPAA reports that studios spend an average of $24 million advertising a movie. Indie affiliates average $8.9 million. To get me to see a James Bond movie each time a new installment comes out, the distributor has to spend big money to tell me about it. In the case of the 2015 Sam Mendes movie Spectre, their marketing budget is estimated to have come in at $245 million, the most ever spent on a James Bond film. Stateside, Bond turned in a $70 million opening weekend, and it finished with $200 million domestic and $680 million foreign. But here's the thing. The distributor doesn't own a relationship with me. So when No Time to Die comes out in November, they have to spend big money yet again to reacquire me as a customer for the next movie. Essentially, Hollywood throws away millions of dollars marketing each movie every single month because they stop short of building a lasting relationship with the consumer. They're either happy that they got me in the theater seat for that one movie, or licking their wounds after they failed to grab my and plenty of other movie theaters patrons' attention. You only need look at the amount of abandoned social media pages for movies that were so active in the 4 weeks leading up to the film's release, and then posting abruptly stops a few weeks after when the theatrical department stopped all their work and the home entertainment department has yet to pick up the reins. Building a quality relationship with your audience? No. It's all about that one sale, and each department is so isolated, focusing on their own agenda, that the overall business model fails to nurture a customer over a 12-month period, let alone a lifetime. How do I know this? Because one of my businesses, Fanology, a Los Angeles-based digital agency, has spent the last 10 years building many of these movie pages for studios and celebrities, managing millions of dollars in ad spend, growing hundreds of millions of followers to generate awareness, not sales, but awareness. I've seen the dysfunction firsthand. And yes, part of the problem is that distributors don't own the means of exhibition. They don't know when you went to the movie theater. They don't know what types of movies you watched over the last 12 months. And they don't know which ads drove you there, which is why exhibition is about to go through a major change in ownership, which I go into with this article on the death and rebirth of Hollywood that I wrote last week, which I shared on this show. So check back for that episode. But that's only part of the problem. The major underlying issue is company culture and the systems through which these businesses have been built. These Hollywood incumbents already have a huge amount of data at their fingertips. The problem is, it isn't shared between all their business units because customer data isn't at the center of all that they do. They simply weren't built this way. This revolutionary model of actually owning movie audiences and mining the associated data to inform business decisions was upended a few years ago by Silicon Valley. Northern California changed the Hollywood game, and Southern California has been scrambling to keep up. As we see the current round of streaming launches by the likes of Disney, Warner Media, Viacom, etc., what we are seeing is Hollywood marketing teams trying to imitate versus innovate, focusing on the short-term wins that are demanded by studio heads who are, in turn, being dictated to by Wall Street. But for Hollywood to thrive, there needs to be a new rule book, and to understand how this rule book works, we need to turn back the clock on the early days of Netflix. Once upon a time in the mid-2000s, a small group of Silicon Valley marketing execs created an advertising campaign to get us, the consumer, to buy their service and stop walking across the road to Blockbuster. In my case, I'd seen a number of ads extolling the virtues of creating a list and having DVDs mailed to my house. Then one day in 2007, I clicked an advert and gave the service a try by paying my first $13.99, which, coincidentally, was about the same price I would have paid for a movie ticket in Los Angeles to see some of the biggest hits of that year. Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Spider-Man 3, or Shrek the Third. Note, they were all sequels. More on the need to build brands later. But in the case of Netflix, without any further advertising, they turned that initial marketing campaign they had me pay $13.99 into over $2,300 in monthly subscription fees over the last 13 years. Yes, I may have spent money on Harry Potter branded merchandise, etc., but whenever I did it in many cases because I saw another billboard for the new Harry Potter world at Universal, or an advertisement for their King's Cross experience in London. In the case of studios, they had to reacquire me for each product's sale. In the case of Netflix, they developed a direct relationship with me, collecting money each month, and only had to focus on creating or licensing enough content each month to keep me engaged. The Netflix subscription model is a game changer. Sell to a prospective audience member once and provide enough great content to keep me paying every month. The effective break-even point for each original movie they create is so much less than a studio because they don't have to remarket to an audience each time they create a new movie. This model hasn't only disrupted the movie industry. Think about the Dollar Shave Club, which came out of nowhere to upend the shaving industry that was once dominated by Gillette. They're exactly the same models. A low-priced item, movie ticket or razor, where the marketing cost would be such a large percentage of the total sales price, so you create a business model that has you own the relationship and increase the lifetime value of each and every customer through repeat sales to the same customer. How much are you worth to Disney, to Warner Brothers, to Lionsgate? What is the lifetime value they have attributed to having you as a customer? They don't know because they don't have that data. And that's the problem inherent in our old system. I would also posit, maybe he'll get into this later, that we're now lifetime consumers of franchises. So the idea that you're going to reinvent a franchise that has been around for 50 years to court some new audience, I think is a huge, huge mistake. All this happened, and this happened with TV too. They didn't have solid data around who watched which episodes and what other content they consumed. They were in the dark. For a number of years, in addition to the digital agency, I led a company that was responsible for the majority of live Twitter chats that actors hosted around their TV shows. Pretty Little Liars, Vampire Diaries, Scandal, Devious Minds, Devious Maids, The Walking Dead, you name it. If there was a cast member live chatting on Twitter while the show was broadcast, my team was involved somewhere along the way producing the live chat, diving into the real-time data to help the show trend on social media, driving the more and more elusive day-and-date TV tune-in, and in some cases aligning brands around these conversations, producing tens of thousands of dollars per episode for each cast member in sponsorship fees. During the U.S. broadcast, and with the lead actor answering questions in real time around the episode on Twitter and Facebook, we'd see all this data coming in from around the world as fans asked questions and commented on the episode. This data told us a lot about the value of fans in each market. There were markets where we saw a lot of activity, but we knew that the network producers had not yet sold the show in that territory. Many times we tried to talk with the producers, distributors, sales agents about how this data could be used to sell more territories and justify higher prices. But time and time again, the various departments at networks and studios never had a system in place where they could actually get the information to the right people and pair our data with others to make the value of their IP even more profitable. At the core of all modern entertainment businesses has to be data that comes from owning the relationship with the end user and understanding what each end user likes and dislikes so you can serve him or her more content and raise the LTV, the lifetime value, of each relationship. This brings me back to Netflix and why it is on a very rocky road which nobody is talking about. Netflix has data on everything you watch. It can market to you every time you log into the homepage with content their algorithm believes you will like based on past viewing habits, so you keep paying the monthly subscription. Big tick. Congratulations, Netflix. You showed the industry how it's done. But Netflix has its own problem with the lifetime value of its consumers. For 14 years, they've continued to make their $12.99 to $15.99 per month, or thereabouts, from me. But they haven't been able to increase it beyond that. My lifetime value curve isn't an upward curve at all. It's linear. And that's not good. And that's a big problem that's going to see Netflix either fall from grace over the next few years, or just before that happens, it's going to become one of the biggest acquisitions in history that makes Disney's purchase of Fox looks like a nice gesture negotiated over a pot of tea. And you're going to see the most likely purchaser with the most to gain as Google. Now, purchasing a movie theater chain like AMC or Regal, as I talked about in my last article, will undoubtedly help Netflix open up new revenue streams and increase the LTV of each subscriber, but they need to do so much more to compete with Amazon, Apple, Disney, etc., and protect themselves against a looming shareholder backlash. Looking at Amazon, Amazon Prime members spend an average of $1,400 per year on the platform, and that number has only gone up during the pandemic. You don't need to be good at math to realize how much more money Amazon makes per customer than Netflix. And because we've been conditioned to purchase other products from Amazon, we are more open to them introducing us to other items that we're willing to click the old add to cart button for. Apple has their computers, music software that they can upsell to their streaming customers if they can work out how to create enough movie and TV content that really resonates with their customers. Disney has long established merchandising, retail outlets, theme parks, and licensing deals that increases the LTV of their customers if only they would place a clear customer relationship management system at the heart of all their business units so they can really track all the touch points. What does Netflix have? Its monthly subscription price and merchandising division that is barely 2 years old. While Netflix showed us the value of focusing on an entertainment audience's LTV, they will be at a big disadvantage over the next 18 to 24 months that could risk their entire model unless they make some pretty big moves. So why is Google the most likely purchaser? Google has tried a number of times to get in on traditional entertainment and failed, mainly because they threw money at the established Hollywood producers who, in many cases, simply didn't understand the platform they were creating for, and partly because they couldn't risk the real investment and oversight needed to launch a major division that is going to report long-term losses during quarterly earnings calls before they see an upside. But the big key as to why Google will eventually buy Netflix is Google's cloud platform. Google's cloud platform provides servers, storage, and networking for the web. This technology is where movies are stored to stream to your laptop, and where your cloud email is stored, websites are hosted, etc. The market leader for these services is Amazon's AWS. In fact, AWS is Amazon's top performer, bringing in a record $10 billion in revenue and accounting for 13.5% of Amazon's total revenue. And guess who hosts their movies and runs all their streaming through Amazon? Netflix. Yep. And don't think the irony has gone unnoticed that the more Netflix customers stream content, the more money Amazon, a key Netflix competitor, makes through their cloud platform division. But the opportunity for Google to finally get in on the professional side of streaming content, they have the user side buttoned up with YouTube, and switch all of Netflix hosting costs onto their own servers, cutting hundreds of millions off streaming delivery costs and bolstering Google's own cloud platform growth would put Google in a great position against Amazon and Facebook, its two biggest competitors. But with all of this being said, embracing the long-term value of a customer and putting it at the center of all business units isn't only for big corporations. Savvy producers stand the most to gain. Indie producers. The problem with most indie producers, of which I absolutely call myself one of them, is that they understand the old business of Hollywood, but they don't understand the business of brand building and selling a product to a consumer. In today's world, producers have the ability to sell their films directly to an audience at the touch of a button, either building platforms themselves or uploading their content to revenue share platforms such as Amazon Prime Video Direct or Vimeo On Demand, and this is nothing new. These opportunities have been around for many years. Still, most filmmakers who go this route often do so as a last resort, believing that a distributor pickup is their golden ticket, which in most cases, as I can attest personally, it is not, and end up completely disappointed because they're expecting these self-distribution platforms to expose them to an audience. But that's not what these platforms are about. They're simply a mechanism to distribute. It's up to the filmmaker to market and bring the audience to their movie, regardless of the platform. And that's where another three-letter acronym comes into play: CPS. If you make a movie and try and advertise it on Facebook, I have no doubt that through effective audience targeting, you can find an audience that will at least engage with the trailer. Then it's up to the quality of the product to convert the sale. But the marketing cost per sale, CPS, is going to cost you more than you can charge in rental purchase fees to get your movie out there. We're back to that catch-22 of movies having such a low price point that marketing them becomes almost impossible unless we're working on a massive scale. The way Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Google, etc. works is that you can place advertisements and effectively only pay for them when you convert a sale. But these platforms want to show ads that will make them the most amount of money. So if you're willing to spend $50 to $100 per sale, all of your ads will be shown over your competitor. And you've got to remember, movies aren't just competing for ad space with other movies. They're competing with car manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, and you name it, all of whom have higher priced items than can afford to pay the ad platforms per sale. At Fanology, there are plenty of clients where we've built companies around beauty products, cars, bikes, food products, where we're able to spend $30 to $50K per week on social media ads and convert that to an initial income of $300,000 to $600,000, as well as monthly recurring income streams through upsells and partnerships. Now, we've also built a number of campaigns for indie movies that grew highly engaged communities, which producers were then able to show buyers like Walmart to help generate sales. The best types of indie movies were always the genre-based movies and those that had a clear audience to speak to, a clear brand identity that matched a focused audience segment. A particular favorite was faith-based films due to the ability to partner with existing loyal and active communities in different churches around the country, which were then able to transfer their brand equity over to movies at a very low cost. Having said that, our grassroots organic indie film work was all at a time when you could grow your following organically on social media and drive them to action on a third-party platform through a post on your feed. But that time is past, and it's why indie film distribution is impossible on your own rules. Unless, and you knew there had to be an unless, right? Unless you come at distribution with a Silicon Valley mindset and try and take on the big boys at their own game, increasing the lifetime value of each customer that you are able to convince to watch, rent, or purchase your content. One such person who has done this extremely well is Ty Bollinger. Never heard of him? Ty achieved a high lifetime value that enabled him to scale his business with a documentary series called The Truth About Cancer, which has reportedly grossed over $20 million. Never heard of it? I'm not surprised. Hardly anyone in Hollywood has. What about his other docu-series, The Truth About Vaccines or The Truth About Peck Vaccines? Yep, not many people have heard of them either. But did you notice the pattern in the names? He's building a brand where you can sell multiple products one after the other and drive a higher lifetime value around each audience member you bring into your world. And he's not just doing that by raising his overall cart value like Amazon is able to do. He's also able to do this by charging way more than most audiences are willing to pay for content. Now, before you discount this model, because the brand titles or the fact that they are documentaries and not scripted, I know that this has worked in a number of genres. It's just that this was one of the most successful I could find that nobody's ever heard of. Additionally, I'm not in any way endorsing the actual documentary or message contained therein. What I find fascinating is the way in which he is selling. Here's how he does it. He gives his 7-episode documentary series away for free. Yes, you heard me right. He gives it away for free if someone registers on his website. Immediately, he owns the relationship directly with his audience so that he can remarket future content to them. He understands that owning that relationship is the most important thing of all. As soon as you sign up, you have 24 hours to watch the first 2-hour episode. After the first 24 hours, the episode disappears, so you can't watch it anymore. The next day, Ty releases episode number 2, which is only available for 24 hours. The next day, episode 3. You get the idea. If you miss an episode, you can't watch it again. On each episode page, the audience has the chance to buy the whole season to watch when they want. Plus, as a bonus, if you buy the copy, you get an extra copy to share with a friend. You get uncut interviews, MP3 recordings, and a few other bonuses. If this sounds like the old DVD trick to get you to buy a disc of a movie you've already seen, then you're right. That's precisely what it is, building extra content to increase the perceived value. When you click to buy, the price is $147 for the digital copy, $247 for the physical copy, or a special of $247 for both. And that's not a typo. He's playing with perceived value pricing, which will convert buyers at a higher percentage for the more expensive option. Now, this is for a controversial documentary series that solves an immediate need, but when producers start treating their movies as a product and put as much effort, if not more, into building a brand and a business around their career versus working to deliver movies, amazing things can happen. Walt Disney himself did this around his animation of a little mouse with big circular ears, building a family brand where people knew what to expect. Carl Laemmle did this around his classic monster horror flicks with his Universal brand. Upstarts treating movies as a business and building a brand isn't anything new. It's just that most people don't want to do the sheer amount of work necessary, but the rewards can be huge. And the keyword here for building a sustainable and scalable LTV of your audience is the word brand. For years, we've heard people complaining about the movie industry and its rehashing of old stories over and over again. But the reason why they do it is because the properties have mass brand appeal. If the indie world wants to make movies it wants to make and build profitable businesses, then filmmakers, producers, writers, directors, actors have to build their own direct-to-consumer brands. They have to work to attract their own audience so they can justify spending $50 to acquire an audience member because they know that each have enough product, movies, merchandise, TV shows, books, you name it, that each customer is going to make them 10 times that. It's simple business. And that's something that many in the entertainment industry don't like to look at. There have been two key players that have held talent back from doing this in the past. The first was the studios themselves, as they held talent under contract, not wanting them to get too much power and usurp their positions. But just look at what Chaplin, Pickford, Fairbanks, and Griffith were able to do with United Artists when they stepped away from the studios. I would also say that's what the founders of Image Comics did very effectively, at least for a while. Then it was the agencies. Actors had a brief period over the last 10 years where they could have built these businesses for free with their organic social media. Agencies scuppered that opportunity in fear if talent had their own audience, then why would they need the agency to negotiate deals and get them jobs? Ultimately, the agencies would lose all of their important power. We saw it time and again at Fanology, where representation would dismiss the idea of talent launching their own direct-to-consumer brands unless the agency had a good stake in it as well, with the likes of Funny or Die. They would advise their clients that such a move would make the client look desperate or cheapen their value in the marketplace because it suggests to the talent that it isn't good enough to get traditional endorsement or overall production deals with a corporation that was willing to pay them up front for their brand alignment. Some bucked the system and became powerful entrepreneurs themselves, such as Jessica Alba and Gwyneth Paltrow, albeit for using their brand power in other industries versus TV movie sales. But most bowed to the almighty agency and held out for a studio or network deal for their production company, or that face-of deal with a major beauty brand. For those that got these deals, what they actually traded for a pair of short-term golden handcuffs was their future freedom. A future freedom that would have come from owning their own audience when they would need them the most, when their shows were taken off the air or when the number of scripts being hand-delivered in manila envelopes started to trickle. You see, agencies are driven by the upfront 10% payments and monstrous packaging fees that come from controlling their talent roster, which is what the agencies have come under fire for in terms of packaging TV shows, which is what the WGA is dealing with right now. Please watch my interview with WGA President David Goodman, if I could shamelessly plug my own channel. They just aren't interested in possible payouts in 5 or 10 years, by which time the agency might have been, or the agency might have been fired by the client anyway. And they certainly aren't interested in putting in a huge amount of work to build their clients' businesses without an equity stake in the long-term upside, because for agents, it's a numbers and scale game. Quick touch points with an extensive roster, closing upfront deals that produce large cash windfalls that give the agency team more power in Tinseltown, and perhaps more importantly, more power within the agency itself. For what will be left of the big agencies in 12 to 14 months, this will be one of the most significant changes we'll see: smaller, more focused client lists. But I've said before, the agency's power is dying. Producers are poised to take their place, but these producers have become real entrepreneurs and talent. Filmmakers, writers, directors, actors have to be willing to make long-term partnerships with those that are behind the scenes, partnerships that just aren't based on a 10% payday that go away at any moment. Just as with Chaplin, Pickford, Fairbanks, and Griffith, today's filmmakers and talent have to build businesses together, and businesses that have clear and identifiable brands that add up to more than the sum of their parts, having the ability to live on past any single project. And don't mistake me citing United Artists as an example to mean this process is only available to A-listers. This is available to all of the industry who have an entrepreneurial mindset. You don't need millions of direct-to-consumer relationships to recoup a series of $500 to $1 million on-brand movies. Doing this entrepreneurial-based independence will not only be able to sell directly to the consumer and build a bankable LTV on their audience, either already in existence or through paying for a niche audience via digital advertising or co-branded partnerships, but they'll also be able to negotiate a stronger position with other distributors or exhibitors because they bring sales, they bring an audience, and they bring true value to the table. At the same time, many of these exhibitors, AMC, Regal, Cinemark, Cineplex, etc., will undergo such enormous changes over the next 2 years as streamers jump in to purchase them out of bankruptcy that we're going to see dramatic changes in the way screens are booked. Technology companies will bring their pragmatic ad-buying magic to programmatic bring their programmatic ad buying magic to movie theaters, and producers will be able to bid on screen times around the country at the touch of a button, in some cases cutting out old distributors, buying up remnant time slots with minimum guarantees. Producers will be able to do this with a fair degree of confidence, knowing that they will be able to make profitable revenue per screen as a result of the data points derived from owning their audience and being able to direct them to movie theaters without spending money on broad and expensive advertising. In turn, the exhibitor is happy because it can take a cut on the ticket sales and sell more food, drinks, and merchandise than they otherwise could with a screen sitting empty or playing a 4-week-old movie already early Sunday morning to 8 people. But whether you are an actor, producer, filmmaker, writer, author, network, studio, streamer, you name it, the list goes on. If you're going to be relevant in the future of Hollywood, you're going to have to fully own your audience relationship, learn everything about them through the data collected at every touch point, and build a strong, measurable, upward curved, long-term value, lifetime value around each and every one of your audience members. Changes are happening across the board, and it's those with the courage to fully embrace the changes and build powerful brands around focused audiences that will win. Just as with Ty Bollinger, many of us may never know the names of these future success stories because they've been so successful in catering toward their niche that they had no marketing waste to those of us that wouldn't care for the product. But just because we haven't heard their name, seen the billboards, or been exposed to their trailer 5 times a week over a 3-week period doesn't make these producers and projects any less successful. In fact, on a return on investment basis, you may find that many of these to be the most successful businesses in our industry. With the Silicon Valley-induced changes going on in the film and television industry, we are about to have a lot less emphasis on the agency-led smoke and mirrors of the show and more emphasis on the business. That's what's going to make this industry we love so much more profitable. That's what's going to broaden the type of content that is available. Content that can have such an enormous impact on the group of people that it can change minds, spark new ideas, and transport those that need to be transported to another magical world where the troubles of their day-to-day life can be left behind. So with that said, how are you going to build your LTV-focused brand? What is your next move? Why did I love this article so much? Well, all of it's true. And I can tell you that what I have been doing here, what I've been doing with Robservations, is trying to do just that. I've been trying to build not just an audience, not just the Post-Geek Singularity and imagination connoisseurs. I'm trying to bring an audience that is also loyal to not just my own viewpoint, but all of your viewpoints. That's why you're here. And the one thing that I've been, when I can, whether it's the short film Skyfighter that I edited, whether it's Prelude to Axnar, the fan film that I was also involved editing, whether it's my past work, Agent Cody Banks, or trying to get my past work like Free Enterprise in front of a new audience in a 4K setting, and whether I have the Hills Run Red Blu-ray coming out, as far as I'm concerned, I'm trying to build a big enough audience where I can, instead of just talking to you all day long about things, I can be making things directly for this audience. I'm obviously not there yet because the kind of things that I want to make are a little bit more expensive. But this audience, I have plans for all of you. I have plans for all of us, how we will be making entertainment content together. That's right. Entertainment content together. Where I'm going to make our little audience, our Post-Geek Singularity, I'm going to turn you, my audience, into the studio that is going to tell me what I should and shouldn't make. I have been slowly but methodically building up this idea over the last couple of years. I've pitched it to friends of mine that thought I was crazy. I mean, there's a lot of things that I want to do, and the one advantage that I have is that I've already done them. I've already produced movies. I've already directed movies and television shows. I've already done these things, and I want to continue doing them. But wouldn't it be great if I was just making this material directly for an audience that believes in what I have to say? And then the proof is in the pudding. I have to put up or shut up. So, and I'm not saying that that's going to happen immediately. I am saying that what Mr. Janes is talking about is exactly true. And I think, look, all YouTubers that you guys like, whether you like watching, like I like Davey504. He talks about the bass guitar all the time. I don't play the bass. I just think he's funny. I like watching Dave Cullen. I like watching Genic, a guy who just paints, airbrushes Gundam models. The guy's a master. I found a new woman who she's also a master Gundam painter. I think her name is Snowblind or I forget. I just found her channel this weekend. I'm become a huge fan. But it's that direct lifetime relationship we have that we're building that becomes valuable. What I want to do, what the Burnettwork will eventually become, and don't think I'm going to stop doing this, but I want to make shows. I want to make shows. And you've already seen examples of the kind of things I've been involved with, whether you like them or not. I hope at least it shows the kind of entertainment, smart genre fare that I'm hoping will eventually be able to compete on a much larger scale. But what I want to do is build an audience that I'm selling directly to. And when I read Jane's work, I'm not going to read. I've got another article I'm going to read tomorrow. When I read his work, I think to myself, here's a guy who really understands where our future is going to be. And that is, I'll be able to sell direct to my customers, my fans, our community. And, you'll be able to give me instant feedback. You'll tell me, Rob, this sucks. This really blows. I'm really disappointed. Now, am I going to be able to make $100 million movies? No. But I might be able to start with, say, a $250,000 an episode series. If I can figure out how to get that monetized. Obviously, I have to be able to I have to get the initial monies to start. I'd need about $350,000 to shoot the pilot, of which there's already some talent involved. But we'll see. And I think that it'll be really interesting, because wouldn't it be great if we could turn the Burnettwork into just that? A Burnettwork. The Burnettwork would be something that I have curated. It would be entertainment, and I would handpick all of the very talented people I know. And while we might not be able to create blockbuster Endgame or Infinity War styled entertainment, that's not what we'd be going after. We'd be going after smaller entertainment that delivers the goods. And hopefully that's something that is definitely what I'm looking to do, as far as this channel. That's my dream, Ray Kinsella. That's my dream, as Burt Lancaster said in Field of Dreams. But, until then, I'll be here every single day talking to you guys and trying to build this community further and listening to what you have to say and all of your input and all that, because what you want is interactivity. I mean, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't you guys be interested if you could be a fly on the wall, not just to watch a documentary after the fact, but literally participate in every single step of the way? That's what I'm looking to build. And I'm looking to build that with a smart, engaged audience. So that's all part of it, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for listening to that. But that's kind of where I'm going. Now, let's jump into some letters. Now, it's interesting. A lot of people don't know I have a website. So if you want to go to the Burnettwork.net, that's the website where you can submit videos and letters. But some people are sort of circumventing that. That's fine. They don't know. I can't do it with everybody. But there are people that are sending me things in various other ways, and which is fine. I have no problem with that. This letter comes from VJ. It's a Twitter. VJEKO1701, and wrote me and said, "Sorry to bother you. I have written up a response article to the atrocious Ruth Terry article on the official StarTrek.com site." That was the article I read about Captain Picard being put in his place. "I saw you reading it on your stream, and I was wondering if you might be interested in reading it and possibly knowing someone in the fandom menace you had some contact with that would be willing to accept it as a submission on their site. Recommending it if you like it, or forwarding it to someone that might enjoy reading it. The article is practically a sarcastic take on the show, using Star Trek's lore to reinterpret Star Trek Picard as a criticism of cancel culture. If anything, constructive criticism from a professional writer is always welcome." Well, I like this article. And after reading Ruth Terry's article on the show about what that was all about, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe StarTrek.com published it. But anyway, here is this article. And this article is A Criticism of SJWs and Cancel Culture in Star Trek Picard, a Response to Ruth Terry. And again, this is by Vetco 1701. A warning from the past. Star Trek has always strived to show us a future brighter than our current reality. A human society that grew up and moved away from things that divide us today. By doing so, it occasionally tackled the problem of people that would use a perceived division within a society to gain attention, praise, and in the end, power, all by spreading labels, lies, and fear in the name of righteousness. Indeed, it is in the episode The Drumhead, where Captain Picard fights against former Admiral Nora Satie, who tries to end the career of a young enlisted crewman just because of his hidden Romulan heritage. When Picard, a highly decorated Starfleet captain, hero of the Federation, and literally the person who saved Earth and the Federation multiple times, threatens to stop her, she resorts to digging up in his past and trying to cancel him, labeling him as a traitor, questioning his past decisions, and desperately trying to paint him, and by the extension everyone who stands in the way of her agenda, as an enemy of the Federation. The episode ends with a warning from our hero, Captain Picard, that no matter how far a society evolves and grows, there will always be those that will hide in the shadows and just wait for the right climate in which their forced division of a society could flourish. His last sentence is a call for constant vigilance, never taking someone's call for division and labeling of others without trying to understand the side of those they are painting as bad or evil. The timelessness of that warning is proved by today's cancel culture, where any critique of people that use popular modern myths as their own political platforms is met with anger, labeling, and fear-mongering. Just as the Romulans are the feared enemy of the Federation's past, these people are using things like Nazism, an abomination of twisted ideals from Earth's past, to sideline anyone opposing the political messaging of today's environment, and labeling them to be the aforementioned Nazis or something similar to that. Earlier this year, the character of now retired Admiral Picard was back in his own show, titled Star Trek Picard, where he faces the Federation's most dangerous foe so far, one that threatens to degrade its society and destroy all the progress humanity has had since the Romulan Wars. In this time period, it seems that those people he warned Worf about so many years ago have succeeded in casting a greater influence over the Federation, making it a society in more than noticeable regression since the TNG days. It seemed that the heroic captain was right, and Federation society has indeed succumbed to fear and hate-mongering of people similar to Nora Satie. First, criticism can plainly be noticed in the interview he does for the Federation News Network. The reporter, trying to get some easy views based on a controversial historical event, calls out Picard for trying to save Romulan lives, the lives of sentient beings that do not share the Federation's political views. Picard's reaction is to put the emphasis on the word lives. In his view, the Romulans and their lives are no less valuable just because they don't share the Federation's political ideology. Their sentience, same as any other of the Federation society, one that proclaims to be dedicated to the notion of equality and the preservation of life, has the responsibility to help them, no matter their personal beliefs. I wonder if the character of Picard would have an in-universe flashback to that trial that took place on his beloved Enterprise D, where a person was in danger of being extinguished just because he has unwanted lineage and heritage. This time, an entire race was in danger for the same reason. It is interesting to see how a Caucasian heritage, one that was admittedly one of misguided social ideals born of advantage similar to certain parts of the world of the past, is now in a similar position of being unwanted based on just as misguided a perceived notion of justice for that past. Later in the interview, the same reporter is called out by Picard, for not even knowing her own species' past, nor understanding the nature of war from which the Earth-Romulan conflicts arose. She is a perfect example of someone trying to use enemies of Earth's past, in her case the Romulans, in ours the Nazis, to gain traction for her career and popularity. She doesn't understand what happened at Dunkirk, nor would she have known anything of the Earth-Romulan War. The Battle of Sharon, for instance, would be something she would have used to promote herself without even knowing how, and more importantly, why it happened. Modern generations mostly draw their knowledge of Nazism from movies and TV shows. They don't understand how it was created nor why it grew. They have no idea that Nazis used fear and anger focused towards a certain segment of post-World War I German society that common people deemed as privileged. If they did, perhaps they would see the pattern in themselves. They would see that spreading fear and hate against a group that shares the same color of skin, belief system, or sexuality by labeling them as universally privileged or bad never ends in unity or peace, but only in conflict, pain, and ultimately death. Going back to the drumhead, the exchange between Admiral Satie and Picard sounds frighteningly familiar in present culture. Picard says, "You know, there are some words I've known since I was a schoolboy. With the first link, the chain is forged, the first speech censored, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably." Those words were uttered by Judge Aaron Satie as wisdom and warning. The first time any man's freedom is trodden on, we are all damaged. I fear that today, and Satie jumps up and says, "How dare you? You who consort with Romulans invoke my father's name to support your traitorous arguments. It is an offense to everything I hold dear, and to hear those words used to subvert the United Federation of Planets. My father was a great man. His name stands for integrity and principle. You dirty his name when you speak it. He loved the Federation, but you, Captain, corrupt it. You undermine our very way of life. I will expose you for what you are. I've brought down bigger men than you, Picard." The way she handles someone standing against her vision of the Federation, again, her way of eliminating anyone she perceives as an enemy of her ideal society. Instead of using arguments to try and logically disprove his opinions or actions, instead of finding any real evidence of his disloyalty or any hidden agenda, she resorts to personal attacks and unsupported accusations. She uses the fear of the Romulans in order to cancel Picard by labeling him as someone that supports them. The end dialogue between Worf and Picard perfectly illustrates this point. Picard says, "We think we've come so far. Torture of heretics, burning of witches. It's all ancient history. And then before you can blink an eye, suddenly it threatens to start all over again." Worf says, "I believed her. I helped her. I did not see what she was." Picard, "Mr. Worf, villains who twirl their mustaches are easy to spot. Those who clothe themselves in good deeds are well camouflaged." Worf, "I think after yesterday, people will not be so ready to trust her." Picard, "Maybe. But she, or someone like her, will always be with us, waiting for the right climate in which to flourish, spreading fear in the name of righteousness. Vigilance, Mr. Worf, that is the price we have to continually pay." The next critique can be found in Picard's former first officer. Anyone that has ever watched or even a single episode of Star Trek, especially those like Time's Arrow or the movie First Contact, can have a pretty clear idea of life on Earth as it would be in Star Trek, in both the aforementioned episode and movie. Deanna Troi explains what Earth becomes in the future to humans from its past. Earth is a place without poverty and internal war. It harbors a society where everyone is given an equal chance at birth and can enjoy more than a dignified existence, no matter what they choose to do with their life. In the words of Star Trek's creator Gene Roddenberry, there will be no hunger, there will be no greed, and all of the children will know how to read. The creators of Picard must have known that about the universe they were writing in, and their choice to show Raffi's life as they did is an interesting one. In a world like that, there is no need for her to live as she does, and the only possible explanation is that it is her own choice. Her own choice to wallow in self-pity and live in less than a dignified way, at least when looking at it through the eyes of her contemporaries. It is her choice to blame others for her disappointments in life, her struggles with addiction, her loss of family and career. It is a typical thing seen in a lot of modern internet warriors where others are always to be blamed for their failures in life. It is the fault of the society or a certain privileged group that they live like they do, and it is the guilt trip they try and push on others in order to justify their own internal one, which drives their actions. It is very interesting that Picard, in his often demonstrated sense of sensibility towards other people's struggles, doesn't call her out or go into conflict with her, but instead offers her a chance of redemption and new purpose. His actions prove to be a sign of hope in her life and push her in the right direction of getting out of the vicious cycle of blame shifting and societal resentment. Deep inside her, she knows that Jean-Luc Picard deserved to have all the luxury he lives in, quote-unquote luxury. In a society based on meritocracy like the one on Earth of that time enjoys, a person that saved more lives than anyone could even count and expand the very boundaries of human knowledge and understanding deserves to live in a dignified peace and relative luxury. Luxury being used very loosely considering the outlook on material possessions in the world of Star Trek. Her lashing out in resentment towards him is indicative of her own internal demons. It is no coincidence that it happens right after consuming the drug that plagues her existence. The feigned lack of admiration she shows toward him comes from a deep layer of anger she feels towards herself. That anger projected onto him slowly fades away through the show as she slowly moves away from her demons. She begins to take her own life back into her hands, realizing it was always up to her to find happiness and peace, not anyone else. It is indeed an interesting arc, by no means close to being closed at the end of Season 1, where, in the end, she expresses her love and admiration for the great human Jean-Luc Picard truly is, taking her first steps into a personal future. Next interesting case written in the show is the form of Admiral Clancy. Is it Clancy? The forgettability of her name was due to the fact that her type of inappropriate communication was virtually the only characterization she was given in the show. The noticeably greater amount of profanities written into post-Nemesis Star Trek, especially Star Trek Picard, is much deeper than it seems. It is by no means the inability of the writing staff behind it to write proper Trek dialogue. I mean, some of the people have been writing official Star Trek for over 10 years. It is intentional and very metaphorical indeed that it is the very character that dismisses Picard and his warning about the Romulan plot on Earth is the one that introduces us to the profanities and their reemergence in the Star Trek universe. She is the very metaphor of the decay of Federation society. Someone holding an important position in Starfleet would never treat the legend that the titular hero of the show is in such a disrespectful way and by using such language. The creators of the show turn the current social narrative of the toxic matriarchy and tackle the proverbial other side of the coin by The creators of the show, you wrote matriarchy, but you mean patriarchy. The creators of the show turn the current social narrative of toxic patriarchy and tackle the proverbial other side of the coin by introducing a toxic matriarchy, which is by no means a new concept in Star Trek. I need not remind the readers of this article about the TNG episode Angel 1, so I won't. But a fascinating episode of the first season of TNG it is. But it is interesting to see an expansion of that topic in Picard. By no coincidence, the writers write all of the primary antagonists of the show as women. Admiral Clancy, before she starts listening to Picard, Commodore O, Sutra, the android that wants to end all organic life and even resorts to killing her own kind to do so, the one-dimensionally evil Uber Tal Shiar agent Narissa, Bjayzl, a crime lord and leader of a group that committed horrible crimes for profit. To put even more emphasis on that, the writers introduce us to two matriarchal groups. The first one is the Uber Tal Shiar, led by a group of women and dedicated to the eradication of all forms of artificial life in the galaxy. In order to accomplish these goals, they were even willing to sacrifice millions of their own brothers and sisters and murder thousands of Federation citizens by attacking Utopia Planitia on Mars and derailing the Romulan relocation efforts. The second one was a group of warrior nuns that, despite the fact that being shown as a positive group in the show, were still plagued by sexism, never truly accepting Elnor as one of their own just because of gender. Even Soji, a girl and an android Picard saved from the Uber Tal Shiar, turns against all organic life in a giant show of racism and intolerance. She comes to the brink of exterminating all life in the galaxy, and it takes Picard's ultimate sacrifice to change her mind. Just as she does, Captain White Riker warps over the planet with a group of identical Federation starships and saves the entire android colony on it. And it is indeed a giant subversion of narrative expectation in the current climate to make two older men with very pale skin pigment the ultimate heroes of a story having to defeat various female antagonists and their matriarchal organizations. Voitko1701 is a freelancer, the pigmentation of my skin, gender, and sexual orientation being irrelevant, based on Earth, and is a fan of modern mythology like Star Trek, Star Wars, and so many others. He has finished all Star Trek multiple times in his life and has been deep into its lore since he was 5 years old. Well, I thought that was pretty great. I really enjoyed reading that. I don't know what other people think, but hey, what can I say? You know what? I love this community, and people keep sending me cooler and cooler things. So kudos to you there. Now, there's been a lot of people sending in tips since I've been on, so let me go back to where I was. Where was I? Let me go back. Here we go. And Willow, once again. Willow is here first. Willow says, one of two. Do you think that people are more forgiving towards bad episodes in episodic television series compared to serialized ones? The third season of TOS and the first 2 seasons, plus the final season of TNG, had more than a few duds. However, overall, the series are still beloved. I think 90% of Game of Thrones is good, but because the final 3 to 4 episodes got botched, there are people who feel that the entire series is ruined because it's one story and not a bunch of contained stories. Well, first of all, the great thing about episodic television is you get a new story every week. So you might have a story that doesn't work for you one week, and then you get something new. So I think that when every story is new, you only tend to remember the great stories because they're supplanted by any stories that aren't so great. In the case of episodic television that's telling one long narrative, if there's a bad episode, it reflects on the entire narrative of the story. And in the look, I find it interesting when people are debating whether or not the final season of Game of Thrones was successful or not. I think if you look at how stories were told over the rest of the show, and even this up through the 7th season, stories and things happened, they unfolded over a period of time. And even when things like the Red Wedding occurred, it was a cumulative effect of a lot of decisions that were being made. Robb Stark, he didn't live up to what Walter Frey told him. They made a bargain, and he broke that bargain. So the just desserts were coming. And astute viewers can be like, oh, man, like it was shocking and it was horrible. But you don't look back and go, wait a minute, you can't just go kill Robb Stark like that. No, those were actual direct results of his actions. So it worked. I think the real problem with Game of Thrones, and this is not to denigrate anybody who enjoyed the end, I thought the last 3 episodes of Game of Thrones betrayed the actual storytelling on display through the first 7 seasons and the first 3 episodes of the 8th season of the show. It was a carefully, meticulously well-plotted program. And it asked questions, things that were planted early on, sometimes seasons earlier, would pay off later. The problem with, I felt, the latter seasons of Game of Thrones when they were off-book is that meticulous storytelling, they didn't have that world building and that story building that George R.R. Martin had woven so expertly into his novels. And the last 3 episodes of Game of Thrones, it left you with a bunch of questions. The first and foremost of is that, I mean, we were asking ourselves about Bran and the 3-eyed raven and time travel and looking into the past and finding out who your parents are and who was a bastard and who wasn't. All of the stuff that went down. When the Night King shows up, there are no answers. As a matter of fact, when the Night King is summarily dispatched, you have to ask yourself, well, what was the point of that? We spent a lot of time in that story about, since the first episode, the White Walkers were a threat. And we saw that relentless threat throughout the show. And then it turns out that, well, they were pretty easily defeated. You know, Arya Stark shows up, Due Ex Machina, and does this. Now, people could say that, well, that was what she was supposed to do. But the problem is that there was a lot more going on story-wise than the Night King being dispatched. Why was he doing what he was doing? There was clearly an intelligence driving him and his people. They used tactics. They destroyed the wall. They took out a dragon only to turn it onto their side. And with all of that, it all comes down to the Night King being dispatched. Well, the Night King and his minions, the whole March of the Dead toward Westeros, there was a reason for that, wasn't there? Well, what was the reason? What that episode did was it negated all of the White Walkers throughout the entire show. None of it mattered. They're just the evil undead. But they were shown as to be more than that. It was insinuated there was a lot more going on with those characters. And then you just got rid of him. So why was he in the rest of the show? All of the questions that had to do with the Night King never answered. So it remained unsatisfying from a storytelling point of view. Daenerys Targaryen's change. I mean, we saw her make mistakes, learn, do things good, do things not so good. This idea that, at the end she's just going to go crazy was, again, a betrayal of her journey. Everyone's like, well, she was a Targaryen. No. Her father was the mad Targaryen. It doesn't mean that she was going to suddenly go mad and become, by the way, stupid. Not only was she shown as being stupid, the Unsullied that they benefited from her knowledge suddenly are what? They've turned into bloodthirsty idiots? They've never been idiots. No one was ever stupid on Game of Thrones. And when they made Daenerys Targaryen, she succumbed to madness and she was stupid. I mean, the people if you're going to overreach, it's because of hubris, like Stannis Baratheon, who actually had a claim to the throne of Westeros. You know, he was overly ambitious, and then he did things like he allowed his daughter to be burned at the stake. I mean, he was irredeemable. So the things that happened and what happened to Stannis Baratheon were earned over the course of the series. When you see Daenerys Targaryen, sure, it made for spectacle, but was that great television? Jaime and Cersei Lannister, were they given satisfying endings? You wonder. You've watched these people go all the way to the end of their story, and what happens at the end? Rocks fall on them. That isn't mythic. That isn't literary. You don't learn anything from that. It just happens, and it seems like a complete waste. Cersei Lannister had been through a lot. She had been forged into what she was by the end of that show, but we'll never know really what that is. Did she learn anything? Was she just lawfully evil forever? I mean, that's what storytelling has to do. And, you know, when you do get to the end of Game of Thrones, I would say it made watching the show, in my mind, to me, it negated my enjoyment of the entire series, because knowing that these characters end in a very unsatisfying manner. Now, there's many people that I understand. They're going to say like, oh, well, it was cool, you know, she went crazy. I always knew that was going to happen. But that to me was a very one-dimensional reading of her character. A one-dimensional reading of the Targaryen legacy. Everybody goes crazy. How is that great storytelling? I mean, Bran becomes the leader. Bran becomes king, which, wait a minute. Well, what about everything that was going on with him becoming the three-eyed raven? Where did that go? And didn't that have something to do with the White Walkers, the Children of the Forest, or anything that was... Guess it doesn't matter. I mean, my problem with Game of Thrones is that the final 3 episodes, in fact, did, for me, ruin the entire rest of the series. Now, I'll enjoy going back and visiting. I love the characters, and I'll go back and enjoy visiting, especially the early seasons, which are some of the greatest television ever. But I really do think that the end of the story in 6 episodes was so unsatisfying. And the big central questions, Daenerys, Cersei, Jaime, all of those stories, Bran, not Rob, he's already gone, but Jon Snow, it was an incredibly unsatisfying, from an emotional, from an intellectual, from a literary standpoint, the end of Game of Thrones might be one of the most disappointing things that's ever happened on television for those reasons. But anyway, Emilio, thank you for asking the question, Willow. Emilio Hansen is here. Emilio Hansen says, if I disagree with a movie politically, religiously, philosophically, am I biased in giving it a negative review? And what will the reviews be for Justice League? Well, here's the thing. I think you're asking an incredibly important question. Because if you disagree with the movie politically, religiously, or philosophically, does that make the movie a bad movie? And I think that's where, when we talk about the objectivity and the subjectivity of art, you subjectively will disagree with a film because of its political bent, its religious bent, or its philosophical bent. Very valid for you. And no one's ever going to be able to tell you, well, you're wrong, because you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. You objected to what was in the film. Now, I would ask you, can you look beyond those things and judge the movie and realize that you disagree with it? You just told me politically, religiously, or philosophically, but you understand that you live in a free society where people have different political views, they have different religious views, and they have different philosophical views than you do. So can you put those aside and look at the movie more objectively rather than subjectively, and then be able to judge it on its own merits and be like, well, I totally disagree with this movie, but I recognize the fact that it's incredibly well made and it did present its side of the story effectively. So I think that's the real question. And I think that's the real question in our whole society at large. Can you effectively disagree with people? Like, I know a lot of people that I disagree with fundamentally on certain issues, but I respect them. They're smart. They're well-read, and when they present their arguments to me, while I might object to them and I might get exacerbated by thinking, how can I think that you're so smart and you still think this way? I mean, I can think of, I won't use his name, but I have a very, very good friend that I've known for many years. He's a dear friend of mine, and we fundamentally disagree on a lot of political issues. But he's one of my dearest friends, and I value and cherish the times that he and I get together and have long lunches and hang out and talk. You know what? He never tells me to fuck off. He doesn't tell me that he listens to me. And there are some places where we actually meet, even though we have differing political ideologies. And that's the kind of friendship that I value with somebody. And I think we should all, one of the great things, all Americans, I can't believe how divisive. I know in our history, we've always had very divisive politics, and we've always yelled and screamed at each other. And hell, we had a civil war. So it's not like, having a divided states of America is something new. But at the end of the day, we all do believe in American concepts, and I would hope that, But I don't know what the reviews are going to be for Justice League. I will say this. Do I entirely buy into Zack Snyder's worldview or filmmaking? No. I really think that, I don't think Zack Snyder is as deep a thinker as I would have wanted him to be to take on Watchmen. But he certainly loves the material, and I will say what Zack Snyder is able to do, whether he takes inspiration directly from the comic page like he did with 300, he does have a style, and he does have a quality to his work that I think is unique. And while there's a lot in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice that pisses me off, I do, especially the Ultimate Edition, when I sit down and watch it, I do feel transported and taken away. There is something unique to his work that I enjoy. And I don't love it. I don't love it all the time. But I do enjoy his filmmaking. A lot of people don't. I find it very worthy of my attention. Just like I love Terrence Malick's movies. I love like The New World. I really liked Tree of Life. Do I think this technique, this sort of tone poem technique that he's been using since he came back to filmmaking with The Thin Red Line? No, I don't love it all. King of Cups, I want it to be better than it was, but there's something about his work that I find compelling, and I admire it, even though I don't love it all. And I think that's okay. I really want to see Zack Snyder, because when I saw Justice League, a lot of Zack Snyder's that thing he brought to Man of Steel and Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice wasn't there. And I want to see, I know it's his compromised vision because it's not two movies, I get that, but I want to see what he was going to bring to what he was doing. I think that what we're going to be getting is going to be a better film. I thought Justice League was absolutely abysmal. And that's what I'm looking forward to. But I think it's a really good question you've asked. What do you guys think? Julius Goodwin is here. Julius sends in a super chat and says, have you tried any wines from Stephen Amell's winery, Knocking Points for Dudes? If so, I would like your opinion. I have not, but I would love to try it. I've always secretly harbored the desire to have a winery. Elizabeth and I have talked about that. When I was in New Zealand, there was a lot of people who had wineries, like little wineries on their lifestyle properties, which I thought was really, really cool. Mukbang sends in a super chat and says, "What did you think of the Mando docuseries Gallery episode 4? It was so good, I can't take it. What a set to shoot on." Well, apparently I haven't watched it yet. I was going to watch it today. Everyone's talking about how something that I covered on this show, the Disney stagecraft technology, that's what I want to see. That's what I'm interested in. I haven't seen it yet. I can't wait to see it. I've been very disappointed by the show up to the first 2 episodes. I have to watch them. Throggiana Jones says, "Hey Rob, I know at the end of every show you thank everybody involved with the show, live chats, and just maintaining Planet Rob and the Robservations universe. I wanted to give you a shout out a little earlier today. You always give them their due, but I thought that some of the members of the Post-Geek Singularity leave or have to miss those appreciations." Well, yeah, I mean, look, I try and thank everybody. I'm very thankful for everybody that makes this show possible. I mean, I still marvel that I have these great moderators who have the time to do this every day. It's amazing, and the whole Post-Geek Singularity itself, it's amazing, and the fact that we're now past 25,000 subscribers, I think it's amazing. So yeah, I mean, that's why. Look, I'm very thankful, and I will thank everybody all day and every day. Because I am thankful all day and every day for everybody here. I mean, this is, it's, to be honest, it's the community that has grown up around this channel has been something that I have been constantly surprised by, to be honest. I didn't know when I started doing this, it was mostly at the behest of both John Schnepp and Elizabeth, who bought me this microphone. I didn't know it was going to happen. I didn't even know, what am I going to do? Now I've settled on this format, which I think works. And, it celebrates the community as much as everything else, which I think is great. So I appreciate that you mentioned the community, and I will not stop. I will not stop doing it. Mukbang sends a super chat and says, "What brand of Blu-ray player do you use or recommend? I use a PS4. It works, and it's easy to swap games. Madden, COD, laugh out loud." Well, my first Blu-ray player was given to me by Mary Forrest, and it was a PlayStation 3, and I loved it. Then I purchased an Oppo player so I could, I have a region-free Oppo player, and I hate to say it, it died. The laser died. And which was a bummer. And then I tried to go and get the new Oppo player. I didn't realize the 4K player I wanted, and then it was gone. You couldn't get it anymore. It went up in price. So I have a multi-region Sony 4K 3D. It does everything. But you know what? It's not a premium player. I'm a big stickler for players like Pioneer Elite players. I like expensive players, and I'm gonna upgrade my Sony player. To be honest, as much as I like it and it's a workhorse, it's just a little flimsy. It's all plastic. The Oppo player is beautifully constructed. The Pioneer Elite players are great, but the Sony, and I have to say that I did buy the Sony player. I bought it off of Amazon, but I bought it from a family business in Chicago, and they were great. I don't know who they are right off the bat right now. But yeah. So that's what I have. Paula's here, our friend Paula, one of the founding pillars of this community. Paula sends in a tip and says, "Congrats on 25,000 subscribers. Well deserved. We're only 5,000 subscribers away from Elizabeth speaking French to us. I also look forward to the premiere performance of Claude's skit exclusively on Elizaviews." For those of you who don't know, Claude and Candida are people that watch a lot of whining about movies. And Claude, it was very funny because we got this. He basically wrote a script for Elizabeth and I to perform. It's like 6 pages long, and Elizabeth was like, "Wait a minute, how are we going to do this?" And I'm like, "Whoa, we can take some time. We don't have to do it off the cuff. We should probably, get a little bit down so we can make it entertaining." So yeah, Mukbang sends in a super chat and says, "As a collector of physical media, which streaming service do you use most?" I would say probably Amazon and Netflix, but I'm watching a lot of Hulu, and we've turned on HBO on and off, but I'm going to get HBO Max. I'm sure It really depends. For me, I am not loyal to a streaming service. I am loyal to programming. So, like with HBO, when they had something good, we'd get it. Like I watched Watchmen and The Outsider, and then we turned it off. And now there's things, and His Dark Materials, and then I want to turn it. I just want to get HBO Max because it's got so much great stuff. But I bounce around. It really depends. Like right now, Elizabeth is loving The Great with Nicholas Hoult about Catherine the Great. It's pretty great, I have to say. It was named well, aptly named. So I'm not sure which that is. I think is that Hulu? I think it's Hulu. Phantom Mercenary sent in a super chat. Well, thank you, Phantom Mercenary. I thank you very much. Evan Newman is here and says, ding, ding, it's time for another round. Oh, these questions. These are great ones. His genre Sophie's Choice questions. Ding, ding, it's time for another round of Take One, Leave One, Memorial Day Weekend edition. Today, we're jumping back to 1998 and pitting Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan against Terrence Malick's The Thin Red Line. Which one will you save, Rob? Ooh. I got to tell you, I'm going to go for Saving Private Ryan. For as much as I admire The Thin Red Line, this one isn't as hard for me. Because Saving Private Ryan as a movie, obviously The Thin Red Line is very profound, and it was Terrence Malick coming back after a long time. But Saving Private Ryan, I don't think that there's been anything more influential than the opening of that movie. The entire Call of Duty franchise basically owes its existence to the Omaha Beach sequence in Saving Private Ryan. And talk about a tour de force. Yeah, it sort of descends into a World War, a traditional movie structure, but the opening and closing of that movie are for the ages, man. For the ages. So, Evan, I hope that is okay for you. Mukbang says, and sends in a super chat and says, thanks for the East Coast contingency for moving Elizaviews earlier. We will be more present. Yes, Elizaviews we're doing at 8 o'clock, and we're moving it to 6. So 9 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mostly, unless we move it. But yeah, I think that's a better time, and more people have wanted it. So that's good. Stubble McShave says, unfortunately, I'm not the answer to life, the universe, and everything anymore. I celebrated my birthday by buying my mom a car so she can get out into the countryside with her neighbor and best friend this summer. The look on her face was the best present. Wow, Stubble. That's amazing. You bought your mom a car. That's great. I can only imagine what that's going to be like. And the fact that your mom probably loves that, and to have a best friend and neighbor that she can go out into the country with. Yeah, the look on her face. I can't even imagine. Did you take a picture? I'd love to see that picture. Let's see. Before I read any more, there's some letters that have come in, and I would like to read them. This is kind of an interesting question. This one comes from Michael Burns, a.k.a. All Metal Mike. Rob, good day to you, and thank you for all that you do and all that you are. When did geeks become mainstream? You talk about geeky things every day, but was it always like that? I think you could make an easy argument that geeks are more prevalent in today's society than ever before. The Big Bang Theory TV show. While having a conversation about the latest Star Wars movie with a coworker, this thought occurred to me. When did geekiness become mainstream and accepted? In my opinion, that crossover happened in 1977 with the original Star Wars movie. Prior to that, there were very good sci-fi movies, even great ones, but they were always on the fringe of mainstream society. Star Wars moved science fiction into the mainstream like nothing else. The movie itself was obviously the main driver because of box office revenue, but I believe the real catalyst to converting the world to geekdom was the merchandising of the movie. I was 17 at the time the movie came out, and I don't recall any merchandising of a movie on that level prior to this. I worked at Toys R Us in 1980, and there was an entire Star Wars aisle dedicated to action figures and everything Star Wars. Perhaps geekdom would have happened anyway with the advent of the personal computer, or maybe it was the combination of mainstream sci-fi with the PC that catapulted us into the world that we live in. Whenever I think about this topic, I'm reminded of the line from the movie Time After Time. It's the scene where Jack the Ripper is talking to H.G. Wells sitting in a hotel room and flipping TV channels in modern times. Jack says something like, 100 years ago I was a freak. Today I'm an amateur. I love that line. That was great. David Warner's performance. I feel like that sometimes. In the 60s, my geekiness was freaky. Today, I'm an amateur compared to you and your fans. Anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the subject. Thanks, Rob. That comes from All Metal Mike in New Jersey. Well, All Metal Mike, I mean, that's the very name of this community. The Post-Geek Singularity, to me, is after the geek singularity was reached. But I have to tell you, when I was growing up, there was lots of geeky communities. They were just small. And they were not mainstream, and they were not connected. You had Star Trek fans doing Star Trek conventions since '72. There was the literary science fiction fans that would put on the World Cons and the more literary-minded conventions that frowned upon us media fans because we weren't reading books, which, by the way, they have a point that still exists to this day. Now we have people that are creating media that aren't reading books, which is a bummer. But I have to tell you, and yes, while I understand there are always women in these communities, I think they were predominantly men. Now, in the Star Trek community fandom, there was more females in it, there was more women in it. But I really think that the post-geek singularity could only have occurred when the fairer sex joined fandom en masse. And I definitely, Star Wars was a catalyst. It began the shift. But I think what really happened, is it started in the 80s. It was a gradual shift, but I would put there were a couple things. There were three things that happened. Well, actually, two things that happened. There were comic books that were more female-centric, and I think Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, and specifically the character of Death, which I also but I think Hot Topic exists. I think the Sandman, the reach of the Sandman comic book and the character of Death cannot be underestimated. There was a lot of things happening, music. There was just a lot of things that were percolating, and the 80s was, Star Wars was the beginning. That was the ground zero of the shift. But it was the combination of all of these things, all different kinds of music, gender bending, all the stuff that happened. But then when women started to get involved in comics, video games, anime, those are the three things that really, and they were there for dudes too, but they really brought in the female audience. And what happened was, at some point, and I watched this occur. I mean, I moved to California in 1988, and I watched fandom morph and change. And by the time in the mid-aughts at Comic-Con, it was all the same. It wasn't just men and it wasn't just boys and girls anymore. It was whole families. And all of it was a process. And I think the process is still evolving, but now it's everybody. The post-geek singularity could not come about until, and look, this channel, my channel analytics are still, well, let's see what my channel analytics are today. As of this moment, I can tell you, I can find out what the analytics are. It's very interesting. Okay, so I go to my analytics, right? I'll go to my audience, and I can tell you, according to my YouTube analytics as of yesterday, 95.7% of the people that watch this channel are male. 4.3% are female. Now, I can understand that. I mean, I'm not a female myself, and I could, be off-putting, I suppose. But that speaks to the audience. Now, there are other. I watched Comic Book Girl 19's article, or her piece, a very good piece on Gene Roddenberry that was done about a year ago today. I thought that was pretty good. So there's creators all over the board, and my viewership is almost, as you can see, I showed this once before, but my viewership in terms of audience is almost a perfect. See that bell curve in the middle? That bell curve is, those other two lines on the far sides were different. But my bell curve is, my audience begins from 18 to 24 and ends at 55 to 64. And 1.5% of my audience is over 65. But my audience is between, the main body of my audience is between 18 to 64 years of age. So it's pretty interesting. But I think now, in the post-geek singularity, I think the audience is Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Now wait, where was I reading? Where was I reading that? Oh, that was. Pardon me. I was in the middle of a letter, wasn't I? As I forget. No, I mean that was just the end. I ended the letter, but I think that the geek space has always been there, and I think the geek space. Anybody who's interested in imagination, there is a certain kind of a person, and we didn't have a society. I also think that being able to indulge your imagination is a luxury when you're not working or you're not thinking about the actual necessities of day-to-day life, the needs of your kids, the needs of putting a roof over your head, and also the connectivity. Along with all of this came, of course, computers and the internet and the ability to talk to other like-minded people. You didn't even have to leave the house and go to a convention anymore. You could find your own communities online, that cannot be misunderstood. And then also, there were things that went mainstream, like Harry Potter. I mean, look at what Harry Potter did: a renaissance of reading, a renaissance of material, young adult fiction of all kinds, that really brought everybody of all people of all shapes, sizes, colors, creeds, genders, whatever, into the fold, and all that stuff. I mean, and now there's this geeky material. Star Wars was unto itself, but now the gamut of imagination. I mean, whatever you imagination connoisseurs are looking for, you've got it now. That didn't exist either. So it's a confluence of events that really, I think, began in earnest with Star Wars, but is still going on to this day. So anyway, well, Stubble, it's too bad. By the way, you're not 42 anymore. I'm sorry. Roger Lee sends in a tip and says, "Hey, Rob, I was perusing your Robservations shop page, and I just love the graphic art of you as Slade Wilson. You make a great-looking comic book character. I may just have to buy that shirt." Oh, thank you. You know what? I think you'd be the first. I don't think people just don't buy my apparel. But yeah, I've got both a TeePublic, a store where things are cheaper, and then this store that you see here. But no one's ever bought that shirt. I thought it was cool. David Crabtree did that artwork of me, and I really like it. Claudius Rex is here. Hello, Claude. Great article, Monsieur Robert. From this consumer's perspective, I would love a neighborhood entertainment complex instead of just a movie theater. The complex would have a store, a comic shop, a restaurant, an escape room, and maybe even a small ride. I mean, that is such a great idea. I don't know why we don't get more of that. I mean, I guess it's kind of like what a shopping mall is, but if it's specifically an entertainment complex, I mean, I would put like collectible shops, a Hot Topic there. You know, I would literally, you know, what's funny is the long article that I read about knowing your audience. It really comes down to that. And we live in new paradigms that people are creating all the time, and you have to understand what those paradigms are. That's why Mr. Jane's work is so interesting. I feel like when I'm reading his articles about the entertainment business, he is, because of his business, and I really like that he was getting into what he did. But the problem with Hollywood is there are very few forward-thinking people in the business. And as his article pointed out, there's very little thought put into these new ways of looking at things because all Hollywood is doing is responding to analytics. And there's nobody at the forefront of, like Silicon Valley, there's no one building up new, like, you know what? Even YouTube, in the 5 years I've worked on YouTube, everyone has changed their thinking about YouTube. I mean, even I lament the fact I should have been a YouTuber back in 2010 because just building up, I don't know what I did. I think what I do in this show appeals to even only a percentage of imagination connoisseurs. But I do think that the percentage of people that I have here is the best audience I could possibly have, because, you know, for all the support you guys give me, which I love, whether it's letters or financial, I would love to provide even more entertainment for you. And there were things that I was thinking about. I was even telling a friend of mine that I was working with on a film, and I said, I want to do this, and he's like poo-pooing what I want to do, and I'm like, he was like, no, you could never do that. I'm like, nah, I think I could. There's something I really, really want to do that's kind of a combination of things that have been done in various ways, but in a new way. And yeah, people would have to pay for them because they cost money. The only reason that I'm not making more things, the only reason I'm not making more movies is because I need money. Why does Free Enterprise not exist as a 4K disc or a 4K transfer? Why haven't I been able to go in and do that? Because you have to pay for it. You know, and it's not, people are always like, well, you should crowdfund this. Yeah, I mean, crowdfunding is great. Axanar, can you imagine if we were able to raise that money for Axanar because it was based on the Star Trek IP, but it would be very difficult to raise money, that kind of money, just for me. But if I were able to, because of this show with you guys, and if I was able to say, okay, I want to make this, you can't just say I want to make a movie now. It has to be very specific. It has to be the kind of movie. But wouldn't it be interesting if I wanted to, I'll just leave it with this. If I wanted to make a movie, you already believe in me, you've already seen my work, if you were my potential employers, and I was able to say, okay, I'm going to take you all on a journey of making something. But here's I'll just throw it out there. I'll throw it out there because at the end of the day, you'd be betting on me here's what I want to do. If given a choice. I want to make my audience the studio. And I want to present you, let's say, 4 pieces of material that I want to turn into a film. Say 4 feature films that I want to budget. Let's say I would start $2 million or less, $2 million or less. You guys are the studio. I would put together my team. Here's who's going to work on this movie, and here's the 4 scripts. We're going to make one of these 4 scripts, and I submit it to you guys. Now, here's the thing: in order to do this process, you would have to pay for it, because you guys are the studio. So you guys are providing, but what I would do is, what you'd be doing is it would be like a subscription service, like a Netflix or something, or maybe it's a one-time fee, but it would be the audience that is involved in every facet of production, beginning with the material. So let's say it was like, I don't know, $25 a month. This is what you're paying for. What you would get access to is every step of the process, to the point where on set there would be people wearing cameras and broadcasting live, like on this show, but say via Zoom. So you could watch anybody. So every department head would have a camera on. Now, I couldn't do this all the time for various legal reasons, but let's say we were shooting your average independent film shoot. Well, let's make it 24 days. So we're going to make a movie. We're going to shoot for 24 days. And you would have to pay a certain amount of money for it'd be a daily event, daily thing. You guys would pick the property we'd make, depending on who voted on it. And then we would go and make the movie, and you would watch every step of the way. So even on set, every day somebody different. I would want to have like 6 people wearing cameras. And like when they were making Minority Report, they had Bagel Cam, and Bagel Cam was at the craft service table, so anybody that walked over to the craft service table could talk. Like now the technology is much better, so people at craft service could walk up and talk and introduce themselves and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm the key grip on the film. Today we're doing this. And you would have the opportunity to zip between cameras and watch what people are doing on set. And this would be every single day. Like, and you guys would get call sheets and production reports every day, and you'd see what was shot, so you could see the entire process. And that wouldn't just be principal, that would be production meetings. It would be the entire process of a movie being made, except it would be made by people that, like you guys, the audience would literally be paying for it. You would be paying for it, and then we would release the film exclusively to you guys. And, if we could sell it afterwards, okay, or it would just stay here, and we would be building that up. That's my basic idea. There's a lot more to it than that, but that was that's what I wanted to do. So, yeah. But anyway, Claude, I don't know why you inspired me to spill my great idea, but I think it's a good idea. But it's been poo-pooed to me by others that are like, nobody would want to participate in that. I'm like, I don't know. If they knew it was going on, yes, there's legalities. I mean, movie sets can be a contentious place. So you couldn't have cameras running all the time, but there would have to be, if you were going to do this, you'd have to get the crew and the actors to agree that, say, for 3 hours a day, if somebody wants to yell and scream, I mean, people want to see that, I'm sure, but not on my sets. I don't like that, but it could be a really interesting thing to do. Would people pay for that? As the article I read stated, maybe some people would. I mean, who knows? But it's an interesting way to go. And I think for me, the evolution of what I want to do is I want to be able to make entertainment, make movies and shows and create content and sell it directly to you, the consumer, and then use those monies and profits to invest in more things and not have to, cut out the middleman and have the consumer pay for it directly. I mean, I think it'd be really interesting. Claude goes on to say, first of all, let me read what he said again. Great article, Robert. From the consumer's perspective, I would love a neighborhood entertainment complex instead of just a movie theater. The complex would have a store, a comic shop, a restaurant, an escape room, and maybe even a small ride. Imagine the kids could watch a movie with friends while the parents have a bite or a drink. The complex itself could host mini conventions with inviting cosplay. Disney, Universal, Apple, and Sony can sell memberships instead of just tickets. I think that's a great idea. Imagine the Robservatory, a complex that airs the Roberian collection of Rob-curated content. In the square, Shatner impersonators quote Shakespeare and spit mad rhymes. There would be a winery built inside a mock-up of the Space 1999 Eagle 1. You know how much I would have to license all that stuff out, though? I would love to do that. I think that is great. Bronco Billy 405 sends in a super chat and says, with the first link, a chain is forged, the first speech censored, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably. Judge Aaron Satie. So good. So good. A spectator sent in a super chat and says, best Worf impression I've ever heard, Rob. Well, I'm glad you think so. All Metal Mike sends in a super chat and says, Rob, I sent in a few posts. I wrote one with a quill pen on parchment paper and sent via Pony Express, and it may take a while. The others I sent via email. Yes, sir. I will be reading them. I'll be reading them all. The Handmaid's Limerick sends in a tip and says, we are forced to cover our face. We are forced to shelter in place. Under his eye we must comply, as the snitches are all well paid. I like that. I do find it sort of strange that everybody is pushing back against wearing masks. It's so funny. It's such a weird... I mean, it's also kind of... it's very interesting. Julius Goodwin, thank you so much for all the ongoing support, sir. Amazing. Says, I was considering signing up for the Burnettwork and wanted to ask, what is this monthly advisory board? Well, Julius, other than my moderators, there isn't one because no one ever signed up. So I would love to start one. I mean, it would be this kind of thing, really. I would love to have somebody to develop new programming and all kinds of things like that. Obviously, you've been a great... I guess you're new to are you new to the channel? Because you've been supporting the channel a lot lately, and I very much appreciate it. But I'm always curious, did you just discover the channel? But I appreciate all that. I mean, we could talk about that. But yeah, I mean, no one signed up. But I would love to have an advisory board where... Look, I've always wanted to expand and do things. That's why when Dieter Bastian sends in a video from Deutschland, or Roberto Suarez sends his videos in. I mean, I always wanted to put more stuff on the channel. So, what can we do to do that? David Tapia says, hi, Rob. As I work to organize my movie collection, I had some questions. How do you keep track of your collection, and do you organize films by genre or alphabetical? Also, do you protect your steelbooks in any way? To be honest, here's how it goes. I alphabetize all of my movies. All of my movies. They're all just alphabetical. And of course, A and the, I go to the next thing. Like a river runs through it would not be under A. It would be river. And that's just simple. And then I organize TV separately. And then anime or something separately. Although mostly if the anime is movies, I'll put it in with the movies. But if it's a show, if it's episodic, I'll move it. Like I have a shelf of just Gundam shows. That's how I organize things. I keep it easy. I don't really protect my steelbooks in any way. Look, I know they can get scratched. You should probably, but I'm the only one who really touches my physical media, so it's no big deal. But I think with steelbooks, I would, like my Laserdiscs, they were all individually wrapped. You can either get those Mylar sleeves for steelbooks and do that, or something. I'm all about that. But it's funny. I mean, no one else really touches my stuff because I don't let them. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. Stub McShave says Hitchcock's Rear Window would be great for Eliza views if Ace hasn't seen it yet. It's a great movie and it lends itself to post-movie discussion. Yeah, we did watch that recently, but we can go back and watch it. We should do a Hitchcock movie. We haven't done a Hitchcock movie yet, and I think that's a good idea. I got some more letters here. Actually, you know what? To be honest, this letter comes from Roy Holman. Roy, short one. Roy says, Robert, definitely want to support you, but unlike probably most people online, I'm an old style 1970s comic book reader and not tech savvy. Is there a way I could call in my credit card number to support your work and programs? Gosh, I never thought about that. I mean, I guess you know what, Roy? I'll have to think about that. I never thought about that. I mean, you want to have accountability. And by the way, all the money that anybody takes in on YouTube, everybody is responsible. That is not untaxable income. That's all income that we have to account for. That's the thing. So one of the great things about tip features, and because that goes through via PayPal and also with the ad revenue and super chats, it's all you get a statement. And it's very, very good for tax purposes. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. All people think that, you're making all this money on YouTube. Well, one, it's taxable. It's all you all have to account for it. So so it's not. Everyone thinks that you're going to get filthy rich, but no. It's great to help the channel go, but that's it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I should figure that out. But I appreciate that, and I like that you're old school 70s comics. I love that you put it that way. This comes from Tumo Patoma. Tumo, what a cool name. Tumo, Tuomo. Tumo Patoma. Greetings from Finland. I remember an 80s series called Street Hawk. Knight Rider and Street Hawk were the best of the time. It would be great to see the series again or a new version. I like both. They tried Knight Rider in 2008. Then there was a rumor that Street Hawk would come back, but nothing happened. And I must mention where the best Christmas movie taker is from. It's, of course, Finland. Rennie Harlan and Die Hard 2. After all, everyone loves it. Keep up the great work. Well, Tumo Patoma, what a great name that is. Dieter Bastian will be excited that you brought up Rennie Harlan as making the two greatest Christmas movies ever made. So thank you for that. Kyle A is here and says, oops, he was here until I made his letter go away. Kyle A says, hey, R&B, hope you're having a great day. I wanted to talk about an issue that has arisen over the last couple days. Many people are doing nothing but bashing and criticizing the theatrical version of Justice League. There are videos of people burning their own copies. They bought it, so the joke's on them. I know. I think that Joss Whedon Justice League is at best mediocre. I don't hate it or call it one of the greatest disappointments ever, but I do find it underwhelming. I find the character of Steppenwolf to be one of the worst villains ever depicted on the silver screen. He has no character and is essentially a CGI mess who smashes things. This is a stark contrast to the great villains of General Zod and Lex Luthor in the previous films. I have turned into a Jesse Eisenberg Lex Luthor defender after rewatching Batman v Superman multiple times. I am too. I like that. I like that take on the character. It's just people can't get past the fact that it's not Lex Luthor, Gene Hackman, or Clancy Brown, or whoever. I find him to steal the show and add something new to both the character and the film. But Steppenwolf, yeesh. Another critique I have toward Justice League is the awfully lazy and insulting score by Danny Elfman. Yeah, it feels like he phoned it in. I love Danny Elfman as a composer. His 50 Shades of Grey score proves that he's still great. But he not only composed a score for Justice League that sounds like every other generic superhero score, but also included themes from other films that had nothing to do with these characters, including the John Williams Superman score is ridiculous. This isn't Donner's Superman. Hans Zimmer's score gives Cavill's Superman an identity, and I felt that when Elfman changed the score, he also changed the identity of this version that we know today. I agree with that utterly. He even said in an interview that he believes that the Williams Superman theme is the true Superman theme, and that just made me sick to my stomach. I love that piece of music they used in the trailer for Superman that Zimmer wrote. What a great piece of music. It's different than John Williams, but it's great. Wow, sorry I went on a rant there. Anyway, I'm here to slightly defend the theatrical version of Justice League because I feel that there were parts of it a lot of people worked hard putting it together, and the film has some fun parts to it. The cast is great, and the chemistry shines and the whole way through. I particularly like the relationship between Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot, and their scenes together are fun. I agree. The scene where he confronts her about Steve Trevor is very emotional, and I think they really sell that scene. Ezra Miller's Flash is a hoot and has some great lines like Pet Cemetery and his reaction to the League leaving without him on the roof. The Amazon battle on Themyscira. Yeah, I always said Themyscira, but it's Themyscira. I know. Is great and incredibly exciting. I love how Batman has a variety of gadgets and he is able to use them in the film with various different vehicles. There's a scene where Superman fights the League, stares at Flash as he tries to sneak up on him and grabs Batman by the throat, asking him if he bleeds. Come on, it may have the mustache, but it's still a fan's wet dream. When I saw Justice League in theaters, I loved every second of it. In fact, I enjoyed it more than the Avengers. What? I've been a fan of the Justice League for as long as I can remember. The animated series from 2003 was really what made me love it so much. As I watched Justice League in theaters, I was in complete joy, finally seeing these characters come to life and possibly continue their journey in future films to come. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Avengers team as opposed to their individual characters when I was little, so that's probably why I wasn't as big a fan of the film as others. But Justice League made me feel like a kid again. I even teared up at the end when we finally got to see Henry Cavill rip open his shirt to reveal the Superman symbol. As I've rewatched Justice League, I've noticed more and more of its flaws and no longer love it the same way I did in the theater, but I don't want people to try and force it out of existence. I was happy watching it, and I bet a bunch of other kids and adults were too. Totally. My dad even enjoyed it, and he didn't even care for Batman v Superman. I can't wait for the Snyder Cut because I'm a huge fan of Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, and I can't wait to see the culmination of the stories. I even designed my high school graduation cap with the Justice League characters from the movie. Let's just be happy that we get to see another Justice League film. Don't bully others or hate on people. Let's all try and do what the heroes we look up to would want us to do. Be kind to one another, but for the love of God, I hope that the unnecessary Russian family is not in the Snyder Cut. Thanks for reading this letter, Rob. Well, listen, man, Kyle, you don't have to apologize to anybody. Yeah, I think it's so bizarre. I mean, Joss Whedon made Avengers 1 and 2, which I love. I don't hate on Joss Whedon. The whole situation sucked, and the movie suffered for it, and I'm hoping that we're going to get a movie that turns out to be better than what we saw before, and I think that's good. It's good for everybody. And again, here's the thing. As much as I bitch and I moan and I complain about a bunch of stuff, mostly Star Trek, that should never take away from, if I criticize something, I like a lot of things that people don't like. I like a lot of Godzilla movies that people don't like. I like Tough Turf. I love Star Crash. I like Hudson Hawk. There's a lot of things that I don't like, or that they don't like that I like. Now, I understand. It's all, I'm secure enough I've always been secure in myself, and I'm secure enough to know that I know that things I like aren't necessarily the greatest things in the world, but I can explain to you why I love them. And I think that's all that matters. If other people don't love them, they don't have to love them. But that's what's so great. Like, I can own a Caroline Munro action figure from Star Crash, and I don't have to explain to anybody why I have it. I like it. I like Caroline Munro. She's beautiful. She was hot as heck in Star Crash and in Spy Love Me. And the fact that somebody made an action figure of her from Star Crash, I'm like, where did they think this was going to make any money? I don't know. But the fact that somebody made it, that means we live in a world that makes me happy. And it's worth spending the money on that. So, hey. Yeah. This next letter, Omar94 writes in and says, Rob, when it comes to special and or visual effects, do you think we will have a new effects titan that people will come to remember? For example, a person who works in visual effects that is celebrated just as much as the actors, producers, directors, screenwriters, etc. While an argument can be made that Rob Legato is an effects titan of today, I just don't know if in the future he will be celebrated as much as someone like Ray Harryhausen, Stan Winston, or Dennis Muren. What do you think? I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a good question. The thing, look, the way that effects has changed has been because of the advent of CG. And before, like, you could have a Phil Tippett, a stop motion animator who followed in the steps of Ray Harryhausen. I mean, Ray Harryhausen, yeah, remember, all the effects guys that are giants have people working for them. So don't ever forget that there's a team of technicians working together to create this stuff. Now they're under great leadership, And the people like the effects technicians that started in makeup effects, like Stan Winston or Dick Smith, all those guys are titans, but they were the people doing the work. Rob Bottin and his crew, Rick Baker and his crew, and these were singular guys. You could follow their careers. I think the world has changed, so we're never going to have those people. We have effects. They're never going to be. You're not going to see. I mean, the reason that we romanticize those effects guys is because Ray Harryhausen was really getting in there and designing and creating his creatures and then manipulating them. The same way that Phil Tippett was, and Richard Edlund was a cameraman and also getting in and overseeing these effects. Nowadays with CG, there's not really. The work is so spread out all over the world that it's never going to be centralized the way it used to be. So we just have to revel in the time of those great effects maestros like John Dykstra or Douglas Trumbull or whoever, Richard Edlund, Peter Curran, the Lord of Light, or Peter Curran, all those people, man. And also we had magazines like Starlog and Fangoria and Cinefex and Famous Monsters, and they brought in terms of effects, look right behind me. Look at this. Actually, I should go on the other side. Those are video games and stuff. On this side, these are my Cinefexes. This is my Cinefex #1. I've shown this on the... Jeez, man, it's gotten dusty. Hold on. My Cinefex 1 is... I know this should be in a bag or something, but this is my Cinefex #1. I bought this off the rack 40 years ago. Cinefex magazine, and look, it's got Alien. This magazine, I'm still buying Cinefex. It's just insane. And when you look at the pages of Cinefex, look at this. You get to see pictures of all the dudes that are in the model shop building building everything. And these were like tomes, these pictures. Look, how could we not love the fact that we watched these technicians? We saw pictures of them and all of that. But yeah, on Tango Shalom, I'm the visual effects producer, which was pretty cool. But yeah, we know all these people, and I don't think we're going to see the likes of them again, and that's too bad. But that's the way of the world. So what can you do? Also, Omar, you go on to say Ramadan is finally over, and having your show on is a great. Well, happy. I hope you had a good Ramadan. Is a great way for me to celebrate. So for my question, how do movie guilds determine who did what on a movie? For the Producers Guild, how does that determine who produced the movies? A producer can mean anything. The Producers Guild has a very strict criteria. I am not a member of the Producers Guild. I'm going to apply with Tango Shalom. I have to have my director, Gabe Bologna, and my fellow producers write in and verify what I did. And I have to have done a level of work before they let me in. A producer can mean anything, as there are several producers on a movie, but how do they all get credited? Steven Spielberg can be a producer on a movie but not do much. What about the other guilds like writers and directors? For writers, the credited writer isn't always the one who actually wrote what was on screen, like Speed, for example. Jan de Bont said Joss Whedon wrote almost all the dialogue in the movie. However, Graham Yost is the credited writer for Speed. For directors, the credited director isn't always the one who directed the movie. According to cinematographer Rick Waite, he said Sylvester Stallone was the true director of Cobra instead of George Cosmatos. However, Cosmatos was the credited director. I find all of that confusing. Well, Omar, very good question. First of all, there are guilds that control all of these things. And when somebody is hired to direct a movie, they have a contract, and their contract is with the studio, whoever the financiers, whoever paying for the movie. The contract says certain things. Now, on the set of Cobra, I've heard that, and George Cosmatos, obviously they worked together on Rambo: First Blood Part 2. They had Stallone being a director himself. Cosmatos was, hey, if Stallone wanted to take over and do that, it's his movie. He's got that prerogative. Now, there are DGA rules that allow that or not, but if Cosmatos signed up to be the director of the movie, he is the director of note. And that's true of pretty much everything. The Writers Guild, any of these guilds, they have very strict rules that you have to adhere to, and things change in production. You don't know what's going to happen. But the guilds are actually pretty good. Look, and when it comes to things like the WGA, if somebody gets hired, like Jack Soward's, very little of Jack Soward's script shows up in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. It was mostly rewritten by Nicholas Meyer, but Nicholas Meyer gets no credit. It has to do with, remember, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. That is one of my first rules, if not the first rule of Hollywood. So there you go. This comes from Jet Screamer. Speaking of your wonderful media collection, I collect video game consoles. That's awesome. Consoles I rarely play. I have 30 now. They're my pride and joy. Hunting and collecting are my real passions. I track down every piece purposefully. I've cleaned and or fixed everything with great love and care. I display it proudly. Behind the scenes, the wires are gaffed to not tangle. Each console is plugged in safely and easy to select. I have to dust and test them regularly, so they do see use. I understand the obsession. Even if you may never get to watch everything, you cherish your collection. I have more games than days left to play them. If I could beat one game a day, I can't. I'd be playing for years and years. We humans are hardwired to connect with each other. We play show and tell in kindergarten. Whether it be news, ideas, or possessions, that silly little skill that we learned as children continues through the rest of our life. I love that technology allows us to share with the people all over the world. This is as close as I can ponder to the meaning of life. Keep it up if it makes your heart sing. Well, what a great letter, Jet. Look, video game technology is really interesting, and watching, I mean, it's a great, literally a graphic example of watching how technology has progressed over the last 40 years. I mean, I wish I had my Coleco Telstar and then my Vectrex and my Intellivision and everything that I've owned as I've moved through my life. Video games are a great thing, and their history too. I think, like you said, if you like collecting it, it's fantastic. And if it makes you happy, I think you're absolutely right. I'm with you 100%. James Kevins is back, and he writes, "Greetings, Rob. Given your background in history in film and TV production, I was wondering if you were familiar with the Fox TV series Action, starring Jay Moore. I used to love Action. It ran for one season during the 99-2000 season, and it achieved critical acclaim for its irreverent and darkly satirical take on Hollywood. I loved it, and Jay Moore was great. For those unfamiliar with it, Moore plays Peter Dragon, a hotshot Hollywood producer known for a run of successful but tasteless action movies. His latest movie, however, went way over budget and flopped at the box office. Feeling pressure from the studio, Dragon secures the rights to a script called Beverly Hills Gun Club from a writer he believes to be a popular talent, Adam Rifkin. It was actually written by first-time writer Adam Rafkin. Since no one at the studio had ever heard of Rafkin, he's finding it difficult to get the story greenlit, even though it's a pretty good script. The series follows Peter's deal-making and hoops he has to jump through to get his movie made. In addition to Moore, the series featured the late Buddy Hackett's final performance and was known for a great many celebrity cameos, often playing themselves. Among these were Keanu Reeves, Salma Hayek, and Sandra Bullock. It was the first Fox TV show to receive a TVMA rating, and it had music by Warren Zevon. Watching the series again recently, I wondered if any of this mirrored your own experiences in the business if you had not seen it. I would recommend it as something you might enjoy. Peace and long life, Jim Kevins." I have seen it, and I totally related. I thought it was a really good show, and it doesn't get enough. Credit, and I haven't had. Well, that's not true. I mean, the experience I had on Cody Banks was both one of the best and certainly one of the worst experiences of my entire life. That went on for a long time, and it cost me many, many things. And it's an epic story that I've told a little bit about, but it's just oh my God. So yeah, you can't work in Hollywood and get things made without having those kinds of experiences. And it gets crazy, man. It gets crazy, and making movies is nuts. Making movies is nuts. But yeah, I did relate to it. I love that show. That show is really, really good, and it did a really good job of doing that, and I think of showing Hollywood for what it was. So I think that it was really, really great. Noel Espada writes in and says, "What's up, Rob? I hope all is well and safe for you during this time. I have a question, and like you, I'm also a big James Bond fan. Do you feel that with the pandemic it in some ways helped No Time to Die reshape itself after a lackluster trailer. Now with the restrictions loosening, will the demand for the film be greater than it was just a couple of months ago? I hope you have a great day. Huge fan. Well, Noel, first of all, I liked the long trailer. I thought that long trailer was amazing. The first trailer was a little, but the second trailer I thought that came out was great. No, I mean, I think that was the first high-profile title to go off and disappear. I think when they bring it back, when they bring movies back en masse, I think No Time to Die is going to be one of the big ones that they bring back. I think it's going to be a big deal. At least I hope it's going to be a big deal. Let's hope, because I really want to see it. But yeah, does the demand go up? I think the demand for all movies has gone up. I mean, at least I'd like to believe that, because don't we all want to see movies? I mean, I know I do. Because yes, I really do. I really want to see movies. Let's see. Let's see. Where are we at? Let's see. Jules Goodwin comes here and sends, thank you very much, Jules, again. To answer your question, as I said about a week or so ago, you came up on my radar due to your appearances on the John Campea show. I started checking out your network independently of that show, and I've been impressed. Your depth of knowledge and style are impressive, and I've been impressed with your style, though I'm still learning about you and your interests. Oh, well, Julius, look, I'm happy that you feel that way. You know, I love being on John's show. It's funny, people are always. I want to say this about John Campea. Of all the people that I've ever met in the entertainment business, and I'm not just saying this because I work for him or with him, he has been one of the most stand-up and upfront people that I've ever worked with. If John has a problem with you, he'll call you up and tell you. And better yet, he'll say, "Look, man, I need to sit down with you, and we need to have a meal." And John will sit down and he will tell you face to face everything that if I did something, like if he was mad at me, he'll just tell me. I mean, he wears his honesty on his sleeve, and what you see is what you get. And that guy works his ass off. He works his ass off, and he feels a huge obligation to his audience. He wants to do everything he can to make his show better. Now, there's going to be people that are always going to disagree with him or don't appreciate his style, or people that have maybe... Look, there are people that think I'm a monumental douchebag. I mean, what can you do? But and when you're putting yourself out on YouTube, you're going to suffer the slings and arrows of... You're going to get fired upon. But of all the people I've met in any aspect of the entertainment business, if there was one person that I would go into, as long as I was, upfront with him, he was upfront with me, it's John. I know that hasn't been the experience that everybody's had, but my experience with John has been incredible. And, after John Schnepp died, it was John Campea who called me up and asked me to come on to his show. And he has been an incredible stand-up guy. And I've learned everything I know about YouTubing and being a YouTuber basically from John and watching John. I mean, I have the utmost respect for him. So I appreciate that you saw the show, and I have very much appreciated you've been very generous with your support since you've been coming to the channel, and you ask good questions and things like that, which I very much appreciate. So thank you very much. But if you want to know more about my interests and things like that, even, send me a message offline or something. And if you want to... No, if it's Starship Troopers, do you want to know more? But there is a lot about me out there in the world, and I always tell people, if you really want to know, look up the trailer for Free Enterprise, the movie Free Enterprise. Just punch in Free Enterprise trailer. There, you'll know a lot more. But thank you, I very much appreciate, and I appreciate the kind words. Nav Graham sends in a tip and says, "Hi Rob, big fan here from Australia." Well, I am a big fan of Australia, so I'm glad to hear from you. Enjoy listening to your commentary and insights. I finally watched The English Patient after you brought it up the other day, and wow, I was blown away. What a strikingly beautiful film. Wish we got movies like that still. Well, Nev Graham, I agree with you 100%. I love The English Patient. I love Ray Fiennes in that movie. I love everything about it. I love the score. I love the cinematography. Anthony Minghella left us way too soon. And, it's funny. When I saw that movie, I said the first thing I thought about, there were two movies in my life, in my adult life, living in California, immediately when they were over, when the credits were rolling, I said, this movie's going to win Best Picture. I felt that about Unforgiven, which opened in the summer, and I felt that way about The English Patient when it was over, and people are like, no, and people now are like, it's the least deserving of the Oscar. Man, I love that movie. I'm glad you loved it. Thanks for watching it. I appreciate it. It's funny, when I say something's good, it's not up to me. You don't have to listen to me. You can go watch it. I've always believed the proof is in the pudding. So that's always a good thing. Brandon Sheehy sends in a super chat and says, your thoughts on The Matador. I love The Matador. I thought was the movie genius? No, but I loved it. And I thought Pierce Brosnan was great in it. I really liked The Matador a lot. You know what? I don't own The Matador. That's a movie I'd like to revisit. I haven't seen that in a long time. But I loved it. I saw it in the theater. I went and saw that in the theater. I actually saw that at the Beverly Connection when it was still there. It's not there anymore. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, I'm not certain that I want this, but do you think we will see comic book-based movie storylines that at least in part will focus on the non-super alter ego, such as Clark Kent? Nowadays, there are no non-super alter ego storylines at all in the movies. Well, I think the problem is, people go to the movies to see the superheroics. I'll tell you something. I think this new iteration of the Batman, and I do think Christopher Nolan's Batman movies have a lot of Bruce Wayne in them, but I think you're right. I think what you're asking for is an actual storyline that either moves concurrently, like the storyline. I'll tell you, I've talked about this before on the show, but there was a Superman comic, and I don't remember who wrote it. And I talk about this a lot, but it was a Superman comic, and in the comic, which I thought was great, is that Superman, Kal-El, when he's Clark Kent, wants to do a good job as a reporter. So, and you saw more of this, like in the Adventures of Superman in the 50s. Like Clark Kent wants to be like the baller reporter, and in this comic, I love this comic. So in the beginning, so Clark Kent wants to be assigned this story he wants to cover in Europe. He wants Perry White to send him to Europe. Now Superman can just fly to Europe, and but he also wants to do this as Clark Kent. And so Perry White's like, okay, you want this choice story, you want this choice job, then you have to cover like these 3 stories for me today. And they were like these innocuous, like a mall opening, somebody cuts a ribbon or something. And you have to cover a sporting event at a local college or something. I don't remember exactly what they were, but there were these 3 sort of innocuous stories that were beneath him. And if you want this job, Clark, you have to write these stories and you have to turn them all in tonight. And then you can have the job. So he starts doing this. He starts covering the stories, and then every time the story he's covering is about to begin, something happens. Like the Toy Man attacks, and he has to go be Superman and save Metropolis, and he has to do this 3 times. And each time he is thwarted. Clark is thwarted, and he isn't able to cover the story, and he's like all dejected. And he comes back, and he wasn't able to get the story. So as Clark Kent, he's not going to be assigned the story by the Daily Planet to go out and go to Europe and cover this thing. And he's actually bummed. And then it turns out Lois, knowing he had to turn into Superman, covered for him and did the stories and turned them in for him. And I always thought, what an interesting, like you could make a Superman movie and concentrate also on Clark Kent, and have the stories dovetail. I mean, that would be the obvious thing. Have Clark Kent as a reporter, as a great a crack investigative journalist. Clark Kent could be on this story, like maybe uncover a major global conspiracy that Superman also is coming out from a different angle or something. I've often thought, what's wrong with that? Like, I like seeing more of the characters in civilian garb rather than just being the superheroes. But I agree with you. I don't know if we're ever going to see as much of that, but I'm curious if Matt Reeves is going to go in that direction, because I think that could be awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to an end to Robservations episode 424. I I want to thank everybody for being here. It's been great having you. I want to thank everybody for the generous support of the channel, for writing incredible letters. I'm getting more and more of them every day. It's great to have 25,000 subscribers. Thank you very much for that. I want to thank, of course, I couldn't do this show without my great moderating team of Mike Bodden, of Detective Jim Boyers and his wife Heidi, Greg Smith, Jordy Lyons, and Louis Yu. And I want to thank the Richard, who runs the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page and the Whining About Movies Facebook page. Please step over there. Richard's always running a watch party. It seems like he's running 24/7 now, where he's always showing cool stuff, which is great. So I want to thank you all for that. And I also want to tell everyone that I will be on the John Campea Show tomorrow morning. I'll be back here in the afternoon with Robservations, and we are going to do Whining About Movies, episode number 32. I don't know what it's going to be about or which movie we're going to cover yet, but I've found that it's become more fun when we go for more populist movies rather than I'm like, yeah, let's watch The Great Beauty or let's watch La Dolce Vita. And while I love these films, I feel like the response is better and we actually have a little bit more fun. I thought we'd be all erudite and all that and watch just the great world cinema, but we can still jump back and forth between those things. But I do think that it's more fun when our movies are more populist, because when people have seen them, they can chime in and say funny things. But we will be back tomorrow. I will announce what that movie is later today on various social media. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I will say to everyone, have a better day, and remember those who we need to remember. And there are a lot of them this month. See you tomorrow.